Hi, this is the 12th day of December. This is the birthday of an old friend. This day never passes without me thinking of this person. So happy birthday to you if you are watching this. You know who you are. And if you're not watching this, just put it out into the universe that you are being thought of. Happy birthday to you. And this is also the day that we're going to do the second or other edition of the Cozy Christmas Book Tag. So earlier this week, I did the Cozy Christmas Book Tag movie edition, created and put out by Art at A Book Odyssey. And today I'm going to do the original one, the original Cozy Christmas Book Tag. It only has 8 prompts. And this was originally put out by Call Me After Coffee. I don't know who that is, but that's what I have found through, YouTube searching. And it's a little bit different, this tag. There are a couple of just answer question prompts. There's one that's like show a book stack prompt. So it's a little bit different than other tags that I've done so far. And I've tried really hard to pull books that I haven't talked about much this year, or at least editions of books that I haven't talked about much this year. So there's 8 prompts. The first prompt is Twinkling Lights. What is the most beautiful book you own? So I own a lot of beautiful books. Most of the beautiful books that I own, I have been given as gifts. I don't tend to care too much about the edition that I purchase. In fact, I kind of like old used books. I tend to look for books that have other people's annotations in them, things like that. But I do have some beautiful copies of books, and the one that I'll show you today is my copy of Emily Bronte's Wuthering Heights, the annotated version. I got this as a birthday gift quite a long time ago. In fact, here is the card. I don't know, maybe the year is on it, but this was a gift from my parents. No year, but it just says happy birthday from Mom, Dad, and Lisa. That's my sister. And that's still in here. But this book is beautiful. It has illustrations, it has the text, it has notes, it has photographs, it has facsimiles of documents, it has paintings by Emily and scenes from the movie versions, and it is just full of all kinds of little details and annotations, and it's beautiful, and I love reading it. This is the kind of beautiful book that I actually do read and use, and it doesn't just sit on a shelf. I think a lot of beautiful books do end up just sitting on a shelf for fear of use, and what's the point in that? Then the next question is the perfect tree. Will you pay more to get the prettiest edition of a book? No, probably not. There are a couple of books that I own multiple copies of, but I don't necessarily want to pay more for a copy that is more beautiful than the copy I already own. I'm much more concerned about how it feels in my hand than what it looks like, usually. There is one exception I can think of right now, which is I did repurchase the Anne of Green Gables and the Emily of New Moon sets of books. I still have my original Bantam small size classics, or not my original, but some original copies and some replacements. Like I've lost some of my original copies, but I have them all in the Bantam small pocket versions. And then I did repurchase in the last few years both of those sets in the Tundra version, because the Tundra version is beautiful, but also the Tundra version is larger and it's floppy and it feels really nice when I'm reading it in my hand. And I got them all at Book Outlet over the course of a couple of years. And so I actually paid less for them than I paid for my Bantam ones. So I did purchase prettier versions, but they're prettier versions that feel better in my hand as well. So the reading experience is improved. I don't just go out and buy multiple copies of books. I do own lots of copies of Jane Eyre, but that's my favorite book. And I'm not necessarily looking for the prettiest. I'm looking for interesting or unique covers. So next, number 3, build a snowman. Make a Christmas book stack, color or theme. So I have a Christmas book stack of red and green books. and I'll quickly mention them, but I won't say a whole lot about them. So I have on the top here, I have Neville Shute's Pied Piper. Neville Shute is one of my favorite authors. I have loved everything that I have read by him, and he writes a lot about World War II, but his character, like the story that he's telling and the characters that he's creating, and the difficulties that they go through, the twists and the turns are just really remarkable. This one is about this guy who was on vacation and he needs to get to a safer, he was on vacation in Europe. He needs to get to a safer location because the war is happening, and he ends up being tasked with escorting a bunch of children who don't belong to him out of the countries that they're walking through, trying to get them safely away from Nazi invasion. And there's a big twist in the end when he is asked to evacuate the daughter of a Nazi official, along with these other children who would be, for lack of a better word, exterminated if caught. So this is quite the harrowing, heartwarming, wonderful story. I love the way he writes. The next book on this stack is a green one. It is Millicent Quibb. I've recently spoken about this in a wrap-up video, but this is a wonderful book and also could be one of my most beautiful books. Millicent Quibb is the first in a new series by Kate McKinnon about a mad scientist and her pupils. It is just a really, really lovely book. The way that it is designed and illustrated, and it is also a wonderful story. So highly recommend, I highly recommend Millicent Quibb if you need to give some gifts to, I would say readers between maybe the ages of 10 and adults if they have any sense about them. This is a really great book. It's funny too. Next on the Christmas book stack, I have The Mercies by Kieran Millwood Hargrave. I read this several years ago and it has really stuck with me. This is about Norway in the 1600s. Maren Mogensdottir. It's been a long time. I feel like I need to reread this. Maren Mogensdottir stands on the craggy coast watching the sea break into a sudden and reckless storm. 40 fishermen, including her brother and father, are drowned and left broken on the rocks below. That's right. So there's this island that ends up being just an island of women. And a priest or a pastor, he's got to be a pastor, has just had an arranged marriage with a girl, and they're going to go be missionaries to this island. And then he gets there and he realizes that these women are running their own lives and they're running these fishing businesses, and how awful that is, them having so much freedom, autonomy, self-expression, and how anti-religious that is. And he needs to put a stop to it. And this is a tragic, tragic book, really well written, really well done, lyrical writing. Loved this so much. I have tried to read other things by this author and did not get along with them, but this book was really good. It is a heartbreaker though. It is a heartbreaker. I have another red one on this stack. That is The Secrets of Hartwood Hall by Katie Lumsden. Katie, of course, is BookTube's, favorite Victorian-loving, Jane Austen-loving booktuber. Katie is the brains behind Books and Things, and she's the reason why I am on BookTube in the first place. I wanted to read some Dickens in 2020. I was reading all of Shakespeare with a group, but I wanted to read all of Dickens. Started looking for videos about Dickens, found her channel, and it was no going back from there. So thanks to Katie. But she has put out 2 books so far. She's published 2 books in the last couple of years. Her debut was The Secrets of Hartwood Hall, and this was such a fun read. This is a nod to the Brontes and Gothic fiction from the Victorian period. Her more recent one is more of a nod to Anthony Trollope, and I haven't quite finished that one yet, but it is wonderful, different voice, and I kind of like that. But still Katie's stamp is on it. The next book I have on this stack here is green, and it's An Unorthodox Match by Naomi Reagan. I love Naomi Reagan. She writes books from a female Jewish perspective, This is a romance between a non-practicing Jew and a Jewish woman and a very religious man with some children, and how they fall in love and how she needs to adapt and he needs to adapt in order to make this marriage work. That's actually the first book in a series, and the second book in the series is really harrowing and deals with child abuse. Neither of them are abusing the children. It's another person in the community. But her books are very real, very realistic, very loving, so well written. Highly recommend her. It's a perspective that you don't generally get in books, and she does it very, very well. The next book I have is a red one. That's Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez. This was the first Abby Jimenez book that I read and loved. I had tried the first two books in the series actually, and did not like them. And for whatever reason, I decided to get this. It was the premise. It was the premise that made me get it. For Book of the Month, I read it and I absolutely loved it. This is a favorite read of the year. And then finally, I have a green one, and that's Home Before Dark by Riley Sager. Riley Sager is the thriller writer that I love to hate, and definitely Home Before Dark is my favorite by him. That's the one about the daughter who goes back to the house that's supposed to be haunted to try to figure out, is this house really haunted? All these things that my father wrote about, were they real or did he make them up? And yeah, it's a great book. It's a great book. Next, number 4, Crackling Fire. What book makes you feel warm and cozy? This is a favorite from childhood, and it's a favorite to this day. This is The Witch of Blackbird Pond. If you've never read The Witch of Blackbird Pond, I highly recommend it. It takes place in the 1600s, mostly in Massachusetts. You have Kit is the main character. She's grown up in Barbados, and she has had a lot of freedom, and she's not been raised in a Puritan society. She's been raised by her grandfather. Her grandfather dies, and she has to she has to sail to Massachusetts, to a Puritan community, to live with her aunt, who is a Puritan, and her aunt's husband, who is a Puritan, and her cousins, who are Puritans, and she is not a Puritan, and she is going to make friends with a Quaker woman who lives on the outskirts of the town, and as a Quaker, she is shunned and rejected and considered evil, almost a witch, and Kit is going to make friends with her and also run her own name through the Puritan mud. It's a great book. Absolutely wonderful. Elizabeth George Spear is the author. Knee-High Socks. What's the longest book you've read? I read a lot of long books. I really like long books. I'm not intimidated by them at all. The one I'm going to show you is the one that I've read that I think is the longest book I've read without any kind of audiobook support. And that is The Brontes, Wild Genius on the Moors, the story of a literary family. And I've actually read this book twice. I read this when I was a teenager, and I read this as an adult. And it is huge, and there is no audio for it, and it is dense. It's nonfiction. And so although this may not be the longest page count, I think it is the longest book I have read without audiobook support. This is a wonderful biography. It's enthralling and engaging, and if you're reading it for the first time, it's really hard to put down, in my opinion. So really, really wonderful book. Uh-oh, I'm making a mess. Really wonderful book. And then Ugly Sweaters. What's the ugliest book you own? I don't think I own very many ugly books, but this was a book that came that I was saddened by because I thought I was ordering a different edition of it. I ordered a used copy of Christie by Catherine Marshall last year, and I got the cover with the TV show on it, the TV tie-in, a major CBS television event. And I am not a big fan of TV tie-ins or movie tie-in covers. I thought that I was getting a different edition of the book. The content of the book is still gloriously wonderful. This is a wonderful story if you've never read Christie. Highly recommend that you read that if you enjoy Anne of Green Gables or that sort of feel. If you enjoy, if you ever read the Jeanette Oke books or anything like that, you will enjoy Christie. It is about a young girl who goes to be a teacher in the Appalachian Mountains, and is faced with poverty and a different culture, and how she needs to make a decision between two men who would fight for her heart. It's a wonderful story. I highly recommend you read it, but I'm not a real big fan of the cover of my edition. Number 7, Blizzards, a book set in winter or a book that gives you the chills and has dark themes. So I pulled 2 off of my shelf for this. The first one was a book I don't think I've ever talked about on this channel. That's The Glass House by Carolyn Leah. This takes place in Iceland in the 1600s, I think, 1500s. A very long time ago. It doesn't say. A very long time ago. And it's about a woman who ends up having an arranged marriage with this guy who has like a room in his home which she's not allowed to enter, and he has to leave frequently. He had a wife and she disappeared. A lot of people say that maybe he killed her. It's a little bit Bluebeard's Ghost, a little bit. Is that what it is? Bluebeard's Ghost? It's a bit Bluebeard in that there's this room that she's told not to enter and she does. And he knows it. And it's a great, great, freaky kind of scary story, a little Jane Eyre, but then definitely not Jane Eyre. It's definitely different. A little bit Bluebeard, but then definitely not Bluebeard. It's definitely different. I really enjoyed this. It's super cold. It's a cold, cold book, and it's also got dark themes. And then I also pulled something a little bit lighter, but which is also a cold, cold book. This is Unreasonable Adults by Robin Leffler. I read this last year and just really fell in love with this book. For whatever reason, it was perfect. It was the perfect read. It is so floppy and wonderful. It has duckle edges and I forgive it. This is about a woman who loses her job. So she takes a job as the marketing director at a very small, privately run artist retreat center, and like a summer camp art program or a winter camp art program, but for adults. And when she gets there, things are very weird. It feels a little bit like a cult. Things are not quite right. She's trying to make this a success, but everybody seems to be trying to stop her from making it a success. And it takes place, it's very cold. It's Canada, northern Canada in the winter, and things are not what they seem. This is a wonderful book. It is a love story, but more than that, it's a comedy and a woman finding herself story, and it's just really, really wonderful. Highly recommend Reasonable Adults by Robin Leffler. Highly, highly recommend this book. And then the last one, Home for the Holidays. For the rereaders out there, are there any books that feel like going home? There are a lot of books that feel like going home, but one that I haven't really mentioned very often is Mary Stewart's Thorny Hold. This one is about a girl whose aunt, maybe a witch, she inherits her aunt's home when she dies and starts to realize that maybe she is also a witch. But the thing about the way that the story is told is that the magical realism, you can't tell as the reader whether these things are really happening, whether it's witchcraft, whether it's magic or coincidence or imagination. It's just kind of there superimposed over real life. And she has a rival for the house. There's a woman and her son who kind of feel like they should have inherited the house, but they didn't. And then there's also this, so there's like sinister plotting possibly going on, or possibly not at all going on. And then there is this little burgeoning romance between her and this guy, but the woman, I believe, also feels like she should have been the one to get the guy. And so there's just all of this like funny, strange, magical, otherworldly stuff going on in this little village. And it's wonderful. It's such a great little weird story. I didn't know where it was going when I first started reading it. I think this was the second Mary Stewart book I read ever. And it was just such a delight. And every time I pick it up again, I feel like coming home. That's that. That is it for the cozy Christmas book tags for the week. Let's go read.